Hey, sportsman, John Bergsman here from the Great Lakes Insider Fishing Report, live in studio here with a Central Michigan fishing report from Houghton Lake. And we're joined today by Kurt, owner of Lyman's on the Lake, one of the most famous bait shops in Michigan, on one of, if not the most famous lake in Michigan. Kurt, talk to me about this upcoming holiday, next couple of week fishing. What are you seeing? What are you expecting? And what's been good?
Well, it's your typical late summer fishing, which means the fishing slow down, but it's still, you should be able to expect to get enough for a nice meal when you go out. If you dedicate a few hours. I mean, this season has been incredible, especially the beginning of the year. And, if you get spoiled, you got spoiled with that. And still, given that it's late summer, this is still better than it's been late summers here for a long, long time.
Well,
You got to work for it a little bit more. You got to be a little more patient, and you got to move around and find the spots where the fish are.
Exactly.
But
One of the things, Kurt, though, that I know for sure is that Houghton Lake, to a patient angler, will always give you some bluegills.
yeah, it's awfully tough to get blanked out here. It's just you do have to figure out what they want. You can be in the area, the perfect location, out here, and there's lots of them out here. The best spots to go fishing day in and day out, year in and year out, is drop-offs by the weed beds. So
Correct.
There's nothing magic about it. There's no special spots on that. It's just find the drop-offs next to the weed beds. The problem for some anglers is that we have literally miles and miles and miles and miles of them. So the good news is there's plenty of spots to look, and you patrol that till you're marking fish, but then you got to find out what they want, especially this time of year. And I'll give you a perfect example. I had one of our guides was out there last week. Said, how was it going? He said, well, they wanted night crawlers. He went in the morning. He said they wouldn't touch a leech, wouldn't touch minnows. They wanted night crawlers. So, we share that information. Guys that were staying in one of our cabins went out that afternoon, in the evening bite. And I told them that. Well, luckily they brought leeches with them, because guess what? They weren't touching any of the night crawlers they had. They only wanted the leeches. So what we tell people, this is that time of year where you have to have, maybe a little bit more types of bait than you could get away with earlier, in the season. So my recommendation, have live bait, have the worms, bring wax worms, bring leeches. The big bluegills, they've been a little bit more consistent, I would say, because we are seeing guys and they're big. We're not seeing very many small gills being caught. They're the 8, 9, 10, 10-inch variety, and it has been waxworms and it has been leeches for those.
Huh.
And they're finding them in about 6 to 10 feet of water. In bigger numbers. Otherwise, it's the typical, you troll through a location, you'll pick up a bass, maybe a walleye, a pike, a rock bass, a bluegill in the same pass, and it's, so you have to, be ready, don't get your heart set on one type of fish. Be more open about it, because every one of them fish tastes absolutely delicious. So.
Absolutely. And one of the things too, Kurt, that I've learned, what you just got done saying, is it absolutely the fact. The month of August can be some extremely good fishing if a guy is patient, and if he does what I term from tournament fishing as a milk run. In other words, he knows his 5, 6, 7 favorite spots. You may have to literally go pull 2 or 3 fish off of all 5, 6, or 7 of those spots. It's not a case of pulling in and catching 38 fish in one spot. You may literally need to bop around and just be perfectly happy to catch 2, 3, 4 quality fish while you weed through some of the other stuff, and do a mixed bag or a milk run to get yourself a really nice bucket of fish.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, there are a couple of spots out there where the guys are they're limiting out on gills. There's a guy that has a real nice perch spot, and they wisely won't tell me where they are, because we will share information with people, and they know that.
Yeah.
So, and that's fine. That's their spots. That's great. We at least know, when they're catching fish, anybody, there's fish being caught. It's great to see the fish come in. So then color-wise, the only thing that's maybe a bit different this time we're seeing an awful lot of greens being used, and that it doesn't matter whether it's a crawler harness, a leech harness, a crankbait. The guys are using ice fishing jigs like striper specials, that kind of thing.
Sure.
We're seeing a lot of greens. We're seeing combination of green and white. We're seeing of course, the chartreuse. Some guys are using black. I'm not seeing as much of the pinks and purples as we did earlier in the season, and it's just more greens, coppers, golds. Those types of colors of what seems to be producing a little more fish. For the bass fishermen out there, the bass they've still been very active, so we're real excited about that. They've been picking bass up. It's kind of like the bluegill waters, the 6 to 10 feet. Those guys using wacky rigs, are using the worm harnesses. Some guys using live bait. I know the purists out there don't like to hear that, but they're catching lots of fish on those types of baits. And guys are picking up some nice bass by pitching the docks here too, coaxing them out from underneath the pontoons that are, tied up, and they're picking them up under the docks. So I'd use tube jigs for that. That's what a lot of guys are using to pull those out of there. So
yeah. That sounds like just an awesome way to spend an upcoming holiday weekend. I know, Kurt, you not only have Lyman's on the lake, but you also have a resort with accommodations. And I'm sure that as we get into fall, you're going to start to have some openings. You've got places for people to come in for long weekends, even a whole week if they wanted to, correct?
Yeah, we can accommodate. We have a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, and a big 7-bedroom house. And we are, it's great to see, but we are filling up in September. We got a few, we still got a few openings in September for those different buildings. October's pretty open, and then we're starting to fill in for the deer hunters in November. So it's a great spot to be. And something that's overlooked here is duck hunting is phenomenal on this lake. We get tens of thousands of migratory birds down here, and people hunt them right off of our dock. We got permission to hunt there, so that's another option for people looking to do a little change up fishing and hunting. So
that's an awesome tip, because there's so many people right now that are traveling huge distances and coming back disappointed, and this gives them that opportunity during that early October period to not drive near as far. Have a great restaurants. I know there's all kinds of good restaurants there in Houghton Lake. You've got the bait store, you've got ammunition, you've got some foodstuffs and all the mixed drinks and beverages that a guy could need, and accommodations right there. It sounds like a recipe for a great weekend. Kurt, thanks so much for an awesome fishing report as always.
You bet. Good talking to you. Have a
great
week.
We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks, Kurt.
All right, very good. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So let's just recap real quickly what Kurt was talking about here. And we've got a couple of those rigs here. Again, I'm going to show you one of my favorite little crankbaits. This is the Strike King square bill, and you'll notice that bill is square. This is a 1.0. This is only going to dive 3 or 4 feet. You say, well, that's not the 6 or 10 Kurt's talking about. The situation there on Houghton Lake is you got big weed beds, and a lot of times you'll get those weed beds that'll stop short of the surface by 3-4 feet. That square bill will run and skim just over the top of that, and that bluegill colored square bill, the fire tiger square bill, the crayfish square bill, and the cream white one are all awesome baits. The Strike King 1.0 square bill is an awesome bait to skim the top edges. So what am I doing? I'm getting right where the weeds start to thin out and drop off into that open water. Put your boat right on that edge and run that edge, long lining those square bills out behind your boat. Big bluegills will pound those square bills. Bass will hit them. Walleye will hit them. You'll lose some of them to northern pike. That's just the way it goes. One tip, go ahead and grab a spool of 25 or 30 pound Seagar fluorocarbon. Throw a couple of foot leader on a crankbait like that. Pike have a hard time biting through 25, 30 pound fluorocarbon. You're liable to be able to land 2 or 3 pike before you have to switch that fluorocarbon out. It's a great way to increase your your possession time on that crankbait. Otherwise, you'll lose it to northerns. Another bait that's really good there, I'll take it right off my rod. This is one of my go-to baits at any inland lake. It sounds a little nuts, but that is the trusty little, the trusty little Hottentot. Now, this is my favorite color. It's got a pink belly, pink sides, and a blue top. And it also has, this is the captain's pink one with the little pink edges on the bill, as you can see. This is one of my favorite baits. I've fished for 29 years here in Michigan and all over the country. That pink and blue Hottentot is a killer bait. It works everywhere, from the Dakotas, anywhere I've ever gone. Great Lakes, inland lakes, that's one of those go-to colors that seems to work. Now, if you're pitching for northern pike, another great option, Houghton Lake, Kurt didn't talk about it because you catch so many pike by accident. A lot of times people don't target pike. Pike can be totally fun to catch. Same thing, 24-inch, 30-pound, 25, 30-pound Seagar fluorocarbon. They'll hit it like a train. It won't stop them from biting. I catch walleyes on it too. And this is my rig. I'm going to show you side by side. What this is a Rage Swimmer, the big white one, and then a Squadron jig head. Now this one is an 1/8 ounce. That's my favorite at Houghton Lake because, again, you're not dealing with a lot of depth. You're just going to straight rig that or the Swimming Shiner right here. That's another great bait. So either the Swimming Shiner or the Rage Swimmer right on an 1/8 ounce Squadron jig. You're going to expose hook that, and you're just going to be long casting that along expansive weed beds. One of the funnest things to do on Houghton Lake is to get up on the upwind side of a big weed bed, drop your trolling motor, and just let the wind blow you down that weed bed, bumping yourself out and trying to just in general stay on the edge of that weed bed where it opens up into open water, where we told you to troll. That same area, if you long cast those white thumping swimming bodies on a 1/8 ounce jig like that Squadron, you're going to whack lots of northern pike, and it can make for just a super enjoyable day. You know, a lot of times it's not about always succeeding at the species you intended to catch. When you get to a lake and the weather conditions aren't really good for walleye fishing and you can't present the bait you want to, a lot of times there's options for just having a great day on the water if you're willing to adjust and just be a fisherman rather than a species specific person. And so I've really expanded what I keep in my boat now. I've always got a few packs of a lot of this stuff so that I can make that adjustment and still catch a lot of fish and have a great day on the water. Hey, thanks for joining us here for the Central Michigan Fishing Report out of Houghton Lake here on the Great Lakes Insider Fishing Report.